Now, there are certain movies that don't live on borrowed time. Some of them rent up mental real estate and live there forever. And I would say that Back to the Future is definitely one of those movies. This is not just an 80s favorite. This is one of those rare films that feels almost too clean, too entertaining, and too perfectly built to belong in the normal world of studio movies. You throw it on for nostalgia, and 5 minutes later, you're fully locked in again like it's the very first time. Because this movie really does have everything: time travel, high school awkwardness, a mad scientist mentor, a bully who looks like he was born to ruin somebody's day, a DeLorean that became more famous than most movie stars, and a third act that is so good it feels like it should be studied in a lab. I think Back to the Future is funny, exciting, warm, weird, endlessly quotable, and somehow still feels fresh after all these years. So the question is not whether Back to the Future is iconic. That answer, I think, was settled long ago. The real question is whether it still plays today without nostalgia doing all the heavy lifting. Does it still have the magic, or are we all just too emotionally attached to a stainless steel car and a flux capacitor? So let's have some fun and find out.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
What's up out there, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is Movies Never Say Die, your home for non-stop retro movie talk. I'm Anthony DeJoya, and this is our kickoff episode of Classics Never Say Die. It's a new series where we're going to revisit the movies that defined the 80s and 90s to discuss why they still deserve their legendary status. And today, we're starting with the iconic Back to the Future. It was released in 1985, directed by Robert Zemeckis, and of course, it starred Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Leah Thompson, Crispin Glover, and Thomas F. Wilson. Now, to me, this is one of those movies that is so deeply woven into pop culture that it almost stops feeling like it's just a movie. The DeLorean, the clock tower, the skateboard chase, the Johnny B. Good sequence, Doc Brown screaming like he just saw underneath the universe's skirt. It's all permanently stamped into movie history. But once you strip away the icon status, once you get past the posters, all the quotes, the warm VHS era glow, does the film actually still hold up? Well, that's what we're going to explore in this episode. Now, at its core, Back to the Future is one of the simplest great movie setups ever. Marty McFly is a normal teenager living in 1985's Hill Valley, dealing with school and family frustrations and the general chaos of being a kid who knows he's meant for something bigger. His best friend, for reasons no one ever really questions because the movie is smart enough not to over-explain it, is Doc Brown, a wild-haired scientist who has somehow built a time machine out of a DeLorean. Now, that alone already sounds like a movie that should have fallen apart in someone's notebook before seeing the light of day.
Get out of town. I didn't know you did anything creative.
Instead, it somehow became one of the most entertaining and engaging movies ever made. When Marty is accidentally sent back to 1955, he of course interferes with his parents' first meeting and suddenly risks erasing his own existence. So now he has to repair the timeline. He has to help his awkward teenage father find his backbone, survive the increasingly uncomfortable reality that his young mother is crushing on him, and somehow team up with the 1955 version of Doc Brown to get back to the future. And really what hits you right away when revisiting this movie is just how tight the setup is despite the mechanics. This movie wastes nothing. Every detail matters: the clock tower flyer, the family dynamic, George being a walking apology, Biff being the human form of every bully stereotype, Marty's frustrations with his own life. All of it gets planted early on and it's ultimately paid off later. So the script is really built like a row of dominoes wearing Nike high tops. Once the first piece drops, it's just a smooth, easygoing ride, and that's one of the big reasons this movie connected so successfully in the first place. The main reason Back to the Future became such a phenomenon is that it took a high concept idea and just made it feel effortless. Time travel stories can always and often get buried in rules and exposition and paradoxes and a lot of very serious people standing around talking about serious consequences. This movie gives you exactly what you need, and then it gets out of the way and it just lets the adventure and the characters rip.
Now I need your help to get back to the year 1985.
I think it also knows how to make the complicated feel personal. Marty's not trying to save the galaxy or the world, he's just trying to save his own future by helping his parents become the people that they were originally supposed to be. So I think that gives the movie emotional stakes that are very easy to grab onto, even while all the sci-fi chaos is flying around in the backdrop. And then there is the casting, which is about as close to a jackpot as you can get. Michael J. Fox is incredible in this movie. He gives Marty everything. He gives him this balance of charm and panic and confidence and relatability and vulnerability. He feels cool without ever feeling untouchable. He's the kind of lead who can carry the comedy, the action, and the emotion all in the same scene without ever breaking stride.
It's gotta be a dream.
And of course, Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown is a home run. He delivers one of the great movie performances of the decade. He could have easily played the role as a pure cartoon, but there is real sincerity under all the hypermania. Doc's funny because he is committed, not because he's winking at the audience. He believes every second of his insanity, which naturally makes us want to believe in it too. And then you have Thomas F. Wilson as Biff, who might be one of the greatest movie bullies ever. He's loud, obnoxious, threatening, ridiculous, memorable, but kind of cool. He's not subtle, but that's exactly the point. Biff is the kind of character who just stomps into the scene like bad news, wearing tight jeans with an odor of Brill cream following his orbit. And Wilson as Biff is perfect for the needs of this movie.
So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
And maybe most importantly, I think this movie blends genres beautifully. It's science fiction, teen comedy, romance, family drama, and adventure all at once. I think most movies that attempt this kind of balancing act end up wobbling like a folding card table. This one glides through genres with ease, like it's riding a hoverboard of its own, and that momentum is what captivated audiences to the tune of just under $400 million at the box office. This is Classics Never Say Die. Plenty of movies hit big in theaters in their own moment, so the real test is seeing what happens years later without the nostalgia goggles and when the movie has to stand on its own foundations. Which is actually where Back to the Future starts to separate itself from the pack, because I think when you revisit it these days, what really stands out about this movie is not just the nostalgia, it's the overall craft. The pacing is incredible. Many modern movies love to move fast, but sometimes that just means noisy editing and everybody racing through scenes with exposition dumps like they rented the studio for the hour, and others circle the drain in their plots to push the runtime over 2 hours. Back to the Future moves with purpose. Every scene is doing something, whether spoken or not, building character, planting information, raising the stakes, delivering comedy, or setting up a payoff. It's lean without ever feeling rushed. I think the humor still works too because it comes from the character and the circumstance rather than jokes that can and will often age out.
Who's president of the United States in 1985?
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
Because here, Marty trying to navigate 1955 with his Mother Played to Perfection by Leah Thompson, George McFly collapsing under the weight of just basic social interaction, and then Doc Brown reacting to information like a manic reject science professor that just took a shot of electricity, is what makes the comedy rooted in who these people are. So it just makes everything feel alive no matter how many years later you watch it. And I definitely think this movie has more heart than it ever gets credit for. Marty seeing his parents as teenagers gives the story a surprising emotional layer. They're not just mom and dad anymore. They're flawed, insecure, hopeful young people, and that changes the way Marty sees them. So the movie does sneak in a lovely little idea beneath all the sci-fi fun. Your parents were actually people before they were your parents, and sometimes understanding that can change a lot. I also think the visual effects and the production design still hold up excellently because the movie, even when released, never depended on the spectacle alone. It used the DeLorean, the time travel effects, and the clock tower just climax as seasoning, not the entire meal, which means the movie itself still plays because the story and its layering are perfectly calibrated. But to be honest, it does help that the DeLorean still looks fantastic, that it still has a timeless movie star swagger to it, and it definitely does help that it's possibly one of the most iconic fixtures in 80s cinema. But even beyond the performances and the pacing, there is something else here, a few extra ingredients that push Back to the Future past really good and into all-time great territory. Because when you really break it down and get to it, the secret sauce of Back to the Future is that it feels completely natural while being constructed with absurd precision. This is one of those scripts where almost every little thing pays off.
Here you go, lady. There's a quarter.
Thank you. Don't forget to take a flyer. Save the clock tower.
The clock tower flyer becomes the climax, George's lack of confidence becomes the emotional engine, Marty's frustration with his family becomes the thing he's forced to confront head on, tiny little details from earlier scenes come back later in ways that make the whole movie feel satisfying without it ever really feeling smug about how cleverly assembled it actually is. And then there's the tone, which is just impressive overall. This movie never gets too silly, it never gets too sentimental or too cold, and never leans so hard into the science fiction that it loses the warmth. It's always moving, it's always entertaining, and always inviting you along. It's a movie that understands that fun doesn't have to mean shallow, and that heart in cinema doesn't have to mean overly sentimental melodrama. And of course, you cannot talk about Back to the Future without bringing up Alan Silvestri's score, which does a lot of heavy lifting in the best possible ways for this movie. It gives the whole story scale and an emotional pulse overall. It tells you that this adventure matters, that Marty racing against the clock in a time machine is not just exciting, that it's heroic. So the music doesn't just support this movie, I think it fuels it from start to finish. And then there's the final stretch. Once the dance starts, the photo begins fading faster. Once George has to step up, once the clock tower plan kicks into motion, this movie just enters that beautiful cinematic zone where every scene feels bigger than the last. It becomes one of those finales where you know what's going to happen, yet you still get pulled in every single time you watch it. And that's the rare stuff. That's the cinematic electricity in a bottle that I think Back to the Future will always deliver. So is Back to the Future still any good? Absolutely, but it's more than that. It's still one of the clearest examples of how great popular entertainment is supposed to work. This is a movie that just is endlessly rewatchable, it's sharply written, perfectly cast, it's emotionally grounded, and just flat out fun from beginning to end. It still has its momentum, its charm, its heart. It still has one of the best third acts of the 1980s, and maybe most impressively, it still very much feels accessible to anybody who's watching it for the first time. It doesn't require nostalgia goggles to survive. Nostalgia is just the bonus dessert in an already excellent full course meal that this movie provides. Because some classics are important, some are beloved, some are influential, Back to the Future manages to be all of those things while also being ridiculously entertaining, and I think that's why it lasts, that's why people keep coming back to it, and that's why it's earned its permanent place on the top shelf of 80s cinema. And that's it for this episode of Classics Never Say Die, guys, and honestly, if there was ever a movie built for a series like this, it is Back to the Future. Now, before you guys bounce out, if you want to continue exploring more gems from the 80s and 90s, I definitely got you covered. You can swing over to my Friday Night Rentals playlist where I cover all kinds of fun hidden gems from the 80s. I got the VHS vaults for plenty of 90s movie madness as well. You can find it all right here. Now let me know in the comments. I want to throw it back to you guys. Where does Back to the Future rank for you guys? Does it still hit as hard as ever, or is there another 80s classic that you think holds up even better? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching my videos and supporting my channel. I appreciate you all. If you had fun with this video and haven't done so, hit the like button. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another video. I got plenty more coming to you real soon. And until then, always remember, movies never say die.
It's Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Survive a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?